We have right now our boots on the ground, GiGi McKelvey, who is outside of that courthouse. GiGi, it's great to see you. What a morning. My gosh, what were some of the main takeaways you saw from the sentencing hearing so far?
Well, it looks, we can only see the back of Lori. She looks very slumped in her chair, kind of turning her head to the side a bit. Looks very uncomfortable to me. One thing to note, there are up to 5 jurors that deliberated this case and one alternate sitting inside the sentencing today that made the trip all the way from Boise just to finish this out. The victim impact statements have been powerful. We all have felt them. It's been quiet in there. So just a very powerful morning, just remembering the victims and not really talking about Lori, making this about who it should be, JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. That's
remarkable that jurors actually made the trip just to be there. They're under no obligation to be there. They're not deciding the sentence. They're just there to witness it. What is the scene like? Because my understanding is there were people camping out last night to get a seat in that courtroom?
Not just last night, Jesse. About 3 o'clock yesterday, and might I add, it was very hot in Idaho at 3 o'clock yesterday. Some were here from 3 o'clock up until we were let in about 8:30 this morning.
Wow. And why did they want to come there? What was their motivation to be there? What were they trying to gain?
A lot of it are people kind of like myself who have followed this case from day one that just are very passionate about justice for these victims, that felt the need to see this come full circle with sentencing since she's been found guilty on all charges. And that seems to be the general mood, just to see justice for these innocent people that were caught in this very evil web that Lori and Chad created.
And what's the scene like in the courtroom itself?
It's very quiet. Everybody's just super focused on the victim impact statements. Now we're into the defense will pick up when we come back, talking about why he should think about other options as far as sentencing. Rob Wood just finished up with saying that the one thing a mother does is protect her kids, and she failed. And she helped murder those kids and had a hand in all these deaths and should spend the rest of her life in prison. He said there's no chance she should be among us out here in the public, no chance of rehabilitation. So we'll see what the defense has to say and ultimately what Judge Boyce rules.
And by the way, just to make clear, the prosecution was recommending straight life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Right. No possibility of parole for the rest of her natural life. The only way she'll come out is when she takes her last breath.
Have you spoken to any of the people that provided statements today? Did you get a chance to speak to the Woodcocks at all, or anybody that's directly connected to this case? I know Colby Ryan, a statement was read on his behalf. I don't believe he's at the courthouse, but have you spoken to anybody who's the family, the friends of the victims in this case?
Yeah, I just had a brief conversation with Kay Woodcock and Samantha, which is Tammy's sister. Kay Woodcock being JJ's grandmother and Samantha being Tammy Daybell's sister. They're feeling relieved that their statements are over, but still just feeling the weight and the heaviness of why we're here. And the fact that their victim impact statements just drove home that they'll never see their loved ones here again. So, while there's relief, there's still that heaviness lingering of the finality of it, that these loved ones are gone forever at the hands of Lori Vallow.
And by the way, it was interesting during the course of these victim impact statements, we were hearing objections being made by the defense over some of the language that was being used, I think directly when it referred to Charles Vallow. What can you tell us about that? What was going on?
There were a few things that the defense did object on. One of those was Charles Vallow and mentioning how he was ambushed. That was not brought into the trial. It was brought in a very limited capacity. But it seems to be that just more of the harsher language of finger pointing and things that weren't brought in were objected to very quickly. And for the most part, Judge Boyce, did do a sidebar where one thing was changed, but he has overruled most of them for the most part and allowed them to keep going.
By the way, whatever happens to her today, what's the next step? Where does she get transferred to?
Well, it could start as soon as today. She'll go to Pocatello Women's Correctional Facility. It's about 85 miles from here. It's going to be a big difference from the Madison County Jail where she's been, which is a tiny jail. Not many inmates there, and the food's great from what we've heard. That's one thing we've consistently heard for 3.5 years. So she is headed to a much different place with a lot bigger fish and apparently not as good of food. So it's going to be a big change for her. I think reality really won't set into her until she breaches the doors of that prison, never to walk back out.
And that's where, if she were to spend the remainder of her life, if she's sentenced to life in prison, that's where she would be, I'm assuming. Has there been any kind of talk about any accommodations made for her? She is a very high-profile killer.
A lot of times what we do see is the first few months they may put them in some sort of protective custody, but the goal obviously is to get her out into general population at some point. So she will at some point in the future face the music of being another inmate amongst many who have done very horrible things. That's
unbelievable. You know, you've been following this case since the very beginning, Gigi. What is it like for you to be there and see this? I mean, we were talking about following this case since the kids went missing. What's it like for you?
It's very full circle. It's, over the years, I've formed relationships with Kay and Larry Woodcock and some of the friends and family of the victims. And so today is just that last chapter in this part of the story. We still have a lot to go. She has charges in Arizona for conspiracy for her husband, Charles Vallow, her ex-nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux, and then we have Chad's trial. But this ends one chapter, and it's been a great experience to see it come full circle and see this verdict and now the sentencing.
All right, GiGi McKelvey, I know you have to jump back into that courtroom because we don't want to miss what the defense's recommendation is going to be. Stay with us, Gigi, thank you. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll either analyze what has happened so far, or we will dip into that courtroom and see the continuation of the sentencing hearing. Stay with us here on Law and Crime. We'll be back.